Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to be asking the question, will we ever see new plastic starships for games like Star Wars X-Wing and Star Wars Armada? This is one of the most common questions I get asked in different forms. Sometimes it's, hey, are they still making this game? Hey, are they ever going to make more stuff for this faction or that faction? Or, hey, I just saw this latest Disney Plus series and there was this ship in there. Do you think they'll do that? Do you think that homebrew is the way for the future? Do you think AMG is going to do more with this? When are huge ships getting their rules and all this stuff? When are we ever going to get another huge ship after the Trident and all of this? So I kind of wanted to use this opportunity to talk about my thoughts on if and or when we're going to get the any new ships for these, what I think AMG's thought process is with this, what I think we can expect, and not based purely on speculation. Of course, I'm going to have some speculation in here, but I'm trying to base a lot of this based on what we've seen. What are the trends that we've seen so far, and where does that point us? So if we look at some of the facts, that might inform some guesses. And of course, some of my stuff is just purely guess, but, I'm also interested in what you guys think, because it's definitely the beginning of a discussion. So I want to hear some of your thoughts down in the comments below. We are also doing a big giveaway right now that's running through Halloween for a $100 Amazon gift card. If you want to have a chance to enter to win that, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. Let me know down in the comments section below your thoughts on some of the possibilities of new ships coming from Atomic Mass Games for X-Wing and Armada. So, in summary, I'll say, are we going to get new ships for these games? And new, when I say new, I mean not a reprint, but something totally new. A whole new design, sculpt, a whole new ship. I don't think so. I don't expect to see that. Granted, I should say I don't expect to see it anytime soon. It's possible years from now that might happen, but I just don't really think so. I wouldn't, if I had to bet, I probably wouldn't bet on it. And there's reasons for that. But I mean, I think the biggest reason is look how long it's been, look how many years it's been so far, and we haven't seen anything yet. Whereas, for Legion, for example, we've seen tons of new stuff, and Marvel Crisis Protocol's had tons of new product coming out, every year, and Shatterpoint, of course, granted it's a new game, but it's having, of course, tons of new releases. So if we look at the pacing and this history and the trends, we really haven't seen that yet. Let's go back to the comment about reprints, because reprints are different than like an all-new ship, even though they're sometimes giving us new cards to go with ships. So if you want to look at the standardized loadouts that we're getting, or the changes to some of cards, like that Outrider, for example, that had some pretty significant changes to how it works in the game of X-Wing. There's definitely some work being done, a little bit more for X-Wing, a little bit less for Armada, but there's definitely some wheels turning behind the scene, not as fast as in other games, but they're definitely still moving. So there's some care there, but the only plastic we're seeing is reprints or existing ships, like in new boxes. In the case of some like those the new squadron packs and starters and things like that. So why is it that we're not seeing any new ship development, especially since we've got so many new ships in the canon? We've got the Bad Batch's awesome ship. We've got lots of new ships in Cassian Andor's show. We've got lots of new stuff in Ahsoka. We've, of course, granted, Ahsoka's a lot newer, so a little unlikely to see too much from Ahsoka, but there's been new things in just about every series that we've seen has had lots of new stuff. How come we're not seeing this? Where's Mando's N1? whereas all of these other things that should be out by now. Like we should have. There's so many things that I'm like, well, we should have seen this by now. I mean, Mandalorian's little N1 starfighter. That was like 3 or 4 Disney Plus series ago. So I'm like, we should probably have that by now, right? So these are questions. Are they ever going to come? And so there's reasons why I don't think that they're going to do that. And this one is a speculation on my part, but it's based on some of the trends that we've seen. Is I think it's probably more more labor intensive and cost intensive and time intensive to develop an all new sculpt for a ship and an all new, especially for a pre-painted ship. And I think that's the biggest barrier for X-Wing and Armada, is the fact that those games are based on this model of you don't have to paint your stuff. Your ships come pre-painted, pre-assembled. So you don't have to, they're not going to come on a sprue. You're not going to have to clip them out. You're not going to have to glue them together. You're not going to have to paint them. And so to create something like that, I imagine there's an entirely different process that goes into creating it. Because when you're creating something for like Legion, Shatterpoint, or Marvel Crisis Protocol, all you have to really build is a sprue that all the pieces kind of go together. And of course, I say all you have to do like it's in something easy. It's not something that I could do. But that process and that skill set to do that, I would wager is very different, or at least partially different, compared to the process of, hey, here, how the factory is going to do this. Because now, like for example, some of the X-Wings have moving pieces. So like a lot of the stuff in X-Wing 2.0, had moving pieces. Wings going up on the Lambda shuttle, X-Wing S-foils, B-Wing, spinning around, and, they have an S-foils move and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So really cool stuff with these models. Heck, the Super Star Destroyer for Star Wars Armada actually has screws in it. A lot of the bigger ships actually have screws. So they're assembled in a completely different way. So they're built in a completely different way. And so they would... It tells me that the sprue or the molds and stuff like that would have to be designed in a completely different way, which I'm guessing AMG probably doesn't have the same people that FFG had on site, or at least doesn't have the same interest or skill set to, or the time really, to create something like that. On top of that, everything has to be pre-painted, and there's obviously there's some kind of molds or templates or palettes or things that have to go on stencils and things like that to create the very specific paint jobs. And if you're getting something through licensing, you have to get a paint job pre-approved. It's very different than if you're trying to say, hey, well, people will get this at home and they're going to paint their own. But now you're trying to get a mass-produced paint job, like on this, for example, the X-Wings, the T65 X-Wings, right? You're trying to get all of those in there. Every little detail has to be perfect. And, if something comes off the assembly line and, Red 5 doesn't have the right number, doesn't have the 5 stripes, or if he's the wrong shade of red or something like that, then it's back to the drawing board versus just having, a sprue and then having your one, the one version of it that just gets put together and painted by a studio hired painter. He can just do it. Now you just have to have the one redone if it's not right, versus an entire line or something like that. So, again, it's probably licensing. It's probably a lot easier to have stuff that's not pre-painted, not pre-assembled and all of that. This way, if something comes out that's canonically not correct, well, that's because the person painted it that way. If somebody wants to paint a pink Darth Vader, they go for it. They don't care about that. But, you can do whatever you want. Not that they don't care about that. But what I mean is it's not their responsibility anymore, versus if the paint is going to be, in the box and, then the paint has to be, approved by Lucasfilm. So my guess, based on the trends that we've seen, is that it's a lot more difficult for them and a lot more work to create stuff that is pre-painted, pre-assembled, and not just because of the design process possibly being more complicated, not just because of a factory and having to, it being more expensive for them to produce, and not just because of the fact that, it might take longer, or it might be a skill set that they, have to hire more people for, but also for licensing. And I would imagine at the end of the day, all of those things add up to creating possibly different profit margins. Like, if it takes an extra 6 months or extra 10 months or whatever to get something like this produced, it probably ends up being less profitable, and it ends up probably being more bang for their buck to just keep producing the existing product that sells well, that's on sprues, that they can probably make for a fraction of the cost that it costs them to make something like this. And so that's kind of my guess. But the reasons why I come to that conclusion are not only the fact that we've only seen reprints so far, but that's definitely a thing. Reprints for X-Wing, reprints for Armada, reprints of existing stock. But it's also based on the direction that they've been going with the content that they have been putting out for games like X-Wing and Armada. It's been very much card pack focused. It's been a lot of content that is based on cards, whether it's a print and play like the rapid reinforcements for Star Wars Armada, or cards that we've seen for like the standardized loadouts, or those card packs like the Battle of Yavin pack and those scenario packs for X-Wing, or the upgrade card pack that recently came out with the Mandalorian one for X-Wing. They're cards that are giving you new pilot options for existing ships. So they were trying to give you new ways to use the ships that you already have. Now, this isn't a criticism. I think that's a cool thing. I think that's a good thing to do, especially if they're in the position that I'm guessing that they're in, where they're kind of saying, we're not going to do pre-painted ships anymore. They're not saying that, but that's my guess, right? That's my guess of their stance. And it's not really much of a leap. It's been years and we've seen no new pre-painted ships for either game. I don't think we will. So also the standardized loadouts too. They're kind of gearing these games to be in a way, especially X-Wing, to be into a format that only, that really support additional PDFs or card packs, additional cardboard packs that can go on store shelves and basically encourage either people to continue to buy existing products or to have new options to use the product that they already have. The same is pretty much true for Armada. To a lesser extent, Armada is getting rapid reinforcements at the rate of about 4 cards or 4 to 8 cards per year, which is abysmally slow, but at least it's something. And but they haven't had a new card pack for Armada. Now, that is surprising to me. Hopefully that will happen at some point in time, but I don't believe they have really any developers that really work on Armada with very much. They have they do have some developers that work at least a little bit on Armada, but Armada doesn't get very much attention. It gets maybe one tweet a year, like when there's a new card pack coming out, or if there's maybe the World Championships, but that's usually lumped in with everything else. So another thing that kind of leads me to say that I don't think that they're going to be doing anymore, ships on a sprue or ships on a in a pre-painted, pre-assembled kind of thing, is the timeline. So let's go back to when all the Star Wars games went over to Atomic Mass Games, and at this point, AMG was already hard at work on Star Wars Shatterpoint, and they get these 3 games dumped in their lap. The interesting thing to me is, out of all 3 games, out of Legion, X-Wing, and Armada, out of these 3 games, Legion is the only one that is a competitor to Shatterpoint. It's not a direct competitor because they are different games, but are in a similar scale, a very similar scale. They're very close. They're dudes on a map. A lot of people who aren't avid players of either game might look at the 2 next to each other and think that they're the same game. They're kind of similar to like Kill Team versus 40K, like slightly smaller scale versus slightly larger scale. So, but they're very similar in a lot of ways, at least more similar than Shatterpoint is to X-Wing or Armada. So it's interesting that out of the 3 games, the one that's the closest competitor to the big new game that they were getting ready to launch happens to also be the one they sort of go all in on continuing to support, especially after the last mini extravaganza with trying to redo the entire line of Legion in hard plastic. They are not only making new stuff for Legion, they've been making new stuff for Legion, but they're also redoing everything that the game has ever had in a new hard plastic. That's going to be actually really awesome, and it's awesome to see that they're really devoting themselves to supporting this game really, really well. Like, this is great. Why not the other games, right? And so to a smaller extent, again, they are trying to do reprints for X-Wing. They're going to try to reprint everything eventually in the 2.0 in the black box format, and that's great. But it's just reprints. Whereas Legion's had lots of new things and continues to get new things. Legion, for example, had panels at Mini Extravaganza. X-Wing and Armada had nothing. They may get some news at Adepticon of next year. So that, I think the fact that they picked Legion to be the one game that was going to get new content, and that one also happens to be closest to Shatterpoint. I can tell you, there's definitely, it may not be seen as a direct competitor, but I have a lot of people that'll comment on like my Shatterpoint videos that are Legion players, and they're say, if I didn't already play Legion, I'd play this, but it's got to be one or the other for me. And these are too similar for me to justify playing both games. And I think that's a common mindset for a lot of people. So I feel like the writing's on the wall. They've, while they may have said it, out loud, the quiet parts definitely indicate that they're not making any new pre-painted, pre-assembled ships, which all leads me to, to the next part of this video, which is the discussion about ships on a sprue. I've talked about it before, and I want to, and I feel like it's framed now. So let's kind of go into this discussion. Before I do that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Luxury Playstyle. Folks, these are amazing full metal tokens. They have tokens fully compatible with Star Wars Legion, a whole line of tokens fully compatible with Star Wars X-Wing. You should definitely check these tokens out. Head over to luxuryplaystyle.com, and you're going to love them. They're double-sided, they're metal, they're shiny, they're gorgeous. If you use code Crabbok VIP, you're going to save 15%. Orders that use that code and spend $35 or more are also going to get a free Crabbok lightsaber nunchuck token. So definitely head over to luxuryplaystyle.com and check them out. All right, so with the idea of, like, my theory is we're not getting any new pre-painted ships. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's ever going to happen. However, doesn't mean that they're not going to still support these games in other ways, as we've seen with like rapid reinforcements or some of the card packs and scenario packs and standardized loadouts for X-Wing. And but it might be that kind of in the way that they're kind of rebooting Legion with all new hard plastic, what if they were to reboot these games with ships on a sprue? And what if that were the only way to get new content for these games? It's hard to suggest that, because I think, when I've mentioned this on message boards or Discords and had discussions going, and I asked people, what would you do if AMG announced, hey, we're gonna, we have a new Armada wave in the works, but it's gonna be ships on a sprue. So you're gonna have to clip them yourselves, glue them together, build them, and then prime them and paint them and all of that. And I always get a lot of pushback to that idea. And I just to clarify, I'm coming from the point of view that is that basically that's the only way we'd ever get anything new, is if they switched over to doing that. That might be the only way we'll ever get these games to really continue to grow past where they are now, is if AMG felt like it was they had the buy-in from the community to go ahead and start doing ships on a sprue. Otherwise, they may just not ever do anything new for these games, as far as new plastic. That's my theory. So that's where I go to with a lot of this is if that's the only way, would that be so bad? Now, me personally, considering that I play lots of games that require me to build and paint miniatures. I personally don't have a problem with it at all. I think it'd be really cool because I like painting ships anyway. But that's me. I think, if they were to do ships on a sprue, a lot of people might be annoyed by that. But it also might bring a lot of new players into the game. Some folks will say, well, they would immediately lose half of their customer base. And I'm like, well, customers of what? What are people buying? Armada hasn't had a product for sale in years. Even rapid reinforcements are put out there as free PDFs, which is also weird to me that they don't have card packs for those yet. Hopefully there will be a card pack for Armada at some point, because I'm like, why wouldn't you want our money? Why are you giving us free stuff? Granted, it needs balance changes, but it's just bizarre to me. But yeah, I wonder a lot about these things. So this whole video has been more of just a very candid talk about a lot of this sort of stuff, and I wanted to just really use this as an opportunity to talk about my mindset on everything. But yeah, so the idea is if X-Wing were to release, ships would be on a sprue now. Is that also is that something you think that maybe AMG is holding out for, or is it maybe that they just don't like ship games? And this is where I want to get some of your guys' feedback, because I know that one of the things that Atomic Mass Games really likes doing is having these really dynamic poses for their bases. They'll have like a character, like they'll have, how many Darth Vaders have they done right now? And they've got all these different poses. Every pose, Vader this way, Vader that way, Vader like, fancy stuff, explosions and rocks, tactical rocks on a base, and, all kinds of different stuff. And I feel like with ships, you can't really do that. It becomes hard to try to do something like that for a game like X-Wing or Armada. I almost feel like, to get spaceships, there's no new content being made for any spaceship games right now, and spaceships are a big part of Star Wars, So I'm like, okay, like Dudes on a Map is also a big part of Star Wars, but so are vehicles and spaceships, and let's keep going with the vehicles and the spaceships. Shatterpoint's not going to have vehicles, Legion has some vehicles, but they can only go so big. No AT-ATs can fit in Legion, right? I mean, I think they could, but so what's really going on here? Like what? Let's take advantage of this huge part of Star Wars. I mean, you guys are, licenses aren't cheap, especially a license for Star Wars can't be cheap. I mean, let's capitalize on this. You got a lot of people ready to give you their money. So that's one of the things I wonder. But I wonder what if they were to do like dioramas, kind of like if they do these scenery or diorama packs where it'd be like an alternate, version of, this character, like Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader in the Emperor's throne room, and you can still use them in Legion, but you can also set them up as a diorama and paint them, and it's a way to give like an alternate sculpt and all of that stuff. I wonder if they could do that for X-Wing and Armada. Could they do like dioramas for a space game like that show, let's say X-Wing. What if you had like bombers bombing an asteroid and then the Millennium Falcon like flying out of the hole as like the worm starts to kind of close in. So you have this whole set piece, and then it's like so basically it's a reprint of the Millennium Falcon and the TIE bombers, right? But you also have like a backdrop and a diorama. And so you can like basically, have something like that, or let's say you do like a Rogue One Hammerhead versus a Star Destroyer, where the Hammerhead's ramming the Star Destroyer, and so you can even you can have ships that are dogfighting that actually have laser blasts and stuff like that. So like, I wonder if they would ever consider doing stuff like that where there'd be extra little pieces, and you can take the ship out of the diorama and still use it, or put it back into the diorama, and I don't know, or even like if laser blast effects like cannons and little pew pews and things like that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to get too creative with spaceship games as far as the sculpts, because for the most part, ships don't really squirm and move and twist like humans or like biological, like Dudes on a Map miniatures would. So I don't know if like, I don't know what's really stopping them, but I feel like it's the pre-painted thing more so than the fact that it's spaceships. But I don't know. But at the end of the day, those are a lot of the reasons why I don't think we're likely to see any brand new ships. And I think, we're likely to just to keep seeing reprints. I would love it if we did get some new ships. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and join our Discord if you haven't already. We have a great family-friendly Discord. Links are in the description below. If you're also interested in get your name in the credits and help being part of Patreon, there's links for that as well. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world and help make this whole channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.